You are not just a villain, you are a nightmare with unlimited power. You were not born, you were built, engineered in a Vought laboratory using a serum called Compound V and the genetic material of a super soldier named Soldier Boy. And the day you came into the world, your heat vision killed the surrogate mother who carried you, along with the medical staff in the room. Vought scientists did not see a tragedy, they saw proof of concept. That is not a metaphor, that is your first act on this planet. Now let us actually think about what that means. Start with the biology, because nothing about you makes sense until the biology is clear. Compound V is a serum first developed by a scientist during World War II, later refined and mass-produced by a company that turned superhuman ability into a product line. It does not work like medicine that fixes something broken. It rewrites what a body is capable of, altering strength, speed, and healing, and in your case, letting you fire concentrated heat directly from your eyes, hot enough to melt steel and vaporize flesh in seconds. The serum works best on infants and young children, their bodies more receptive to that kind of alteration, which is exactly why you were dosed before you could form a single memory. You never chose this. You were a test subject before you were a person, and by the time you were old enough to understand what had happened to you, it had already happened. Here's the part most people miss. Physical invulnerability was never the dangerous part. Bullets bouncing off skin, flight, heat vision that can level a building, none of that is what makes you frightening. Plenty of fictional heroes have that same toolkit and use it to help people. What makes you different sits entirely in the mind. And to understand that, you have to look at how you were raised, or more accurately, how you were not raised at all. You grew up inside a laboratory. No parents, no siblings, no neighborhood, no normal contact with another human being who wanted nothing from you. The scientists who watched you through observation glass were not raising a child, they were monitoring an asset. Praise came only when you performed, when you survived a test, when you demonstrated a new capability. Comfort came rarely, and always with conditions attached. Developmental psychology has understood what happens to a human brain deprived of consistent affection in early childhood, and the pattern is not subtle. Isolation like that during the years when a brain is supposed to be learning trust and empathy from a caregiver does not just delay development, it can permanently reshape how a person forms attachments. You experienced an extreme version of that deprivation, and on top of it, you were taught from your earliest years that your worth was tied entirely to performance and power. That combination produces a very specific outcome, and it has a name. The clinical picture lines up with narcissistic personality disorder almost perfectly. Grandiosity, an insatiable need for admiration, a near total absence of empathy, and rage when that admiration is threatened. Underneath that sits something even more foundational, an attachment disorder rooted in a childhood with no genuine bond to another person. The two feed each other. The narcissism gives you a shield, a constant performance of strength and superiority. The attachment disorder is the wound that shield exists to cover. When something offers you real, unconditional affection, the instinct that should let you accept it is broken, because trusting someone means being vulnerable, and vulnerability was punished in that lab every day of your childhood.
There is a small but telling detail that shows how deep this goes. As an adult, you develop a fixation on milk, drinking it straight from the carton, watching a woman who cared for you nurse her own child and wanting that closeness for yourself. That is not a random quirk written in for shock value. It is the visible edge of an emotional wound that never closed. A grown man with godlike strength still chasing the most basic form of comfort a human infant is supposed to receive without asking. Power did nothing to fix that hole. If anything, it made the hole easier to hide, because nobody questions a man who can end their life with a glance. So now put both of these together, the body that cannot be hurt and the mind that was never allowed to heal. This is where the real danger lives. A person with ordinary strength and this same psychological profile is a serious problem for the people immediately around them. A person with your strength and this profile is a problem for civilization. When a hijacked commercial jet goes down because you accidentally destroy its controls with your own heat vision, an ordinary flawed person might feel guilt, might try to fix it, might at least try to save who they can. You do not. You calculate the damage to your image, decide the truth is more dangerous to you than hundreds of deaths, and you leave, physically stopping another hero from attempting a rescue because her trying makes your inaction look worse. Afterward, you stand in front of cameras and turn the tragedy into a talking point for your own benefit. That is not cruelty in isolation. That is the narcissism and the invulnerability working together perfectly. No consequence to fear, no empathy to override the calculation. The same mechanism explains everything else. A witness sees something they should not, so you kill them, because their life was never as real as your own exposure. An old and loyal ally learns a secret about your true parentage, and rather than face the shame of that truth being known, you kill him too. Decades of service erased in a moment, because loyalty only matters to you when it flows toward you, never the other way. You isolate your own son and push him away from his mother, not because you love him poorly, but because the only love you understand is control, so you try to build him into a smaller copy of yourself, rather than let him become his own person. You terrorize your own team, using fear instead of respect to hold power, because respect requires other people to see you as an equal, and equality was never part of your training. You silence anyone whose criticism threatens the image, because the image is the only thing standing between you and the raw terror of the lab you grew up in. And here is what breaks and what does not. Your body never breaks. That part of the equation is fixed. What breaks is everyone around you, one relationship, one institution, one life at a time, because the psychological safety mechanisms that stop most powerful people from doing real damage, empathy, fear of consequence, attachment to other human beings, none of those mechanisms exist in you the way they should. As your following grows and people start openly cheering the cruelty rather than recoiling from it, you stop hiding it, because their approval is the closest thing you've ever had to the love you were denied as a child, and their approval requires exactly the behavior that is most dangerous. That is the loop. Adoration feeds the wound produces the violence produces more adoration from the people who like what they see. Nothing in that loop points toward restraint, and everything about your physical power means restraint was never enforced on you the way it is on anyone else. That is why the open threat matters so much, the promise that if you ever lose everything, you will take cities, government, and infrastructure down with you. It is not an idle boast, it is the honest output of a system with no safety mechanism, a person who has never once faced a consequence large enough to teach him fear. Think about what this means at a cultural level, not just a personal one. A man like this does not stay a private danger for long, not when he's also the most famous face on television screens, plastered across billboards and children's merchandise as a symbol of safety and strength. The public doesn't see the lab, the isolation, the broken attachment underneath the costume. They see the flag-draped shoulders and the winning smile, and they hand them their trust freely. When that trust starts curdling into open worship of his cruelty rather than his heroism, the danger stops being contained to the people standing directly in front of him. It becomes a permission structure for everyone watching, proof that enough strength and enough charisma can make cruelty look like leadership. That is a more patient kind of damage than any single act of violence, and in some ways it's the most dangerous thing about you. You are not a monster because you are strong. You are a monster because nothing in your entire existence ever taught you what strength is supposed to protect.